Well, good morning once again. This is Lyle Hanna, and I'd like to welcome you to Crisis Management for COVID-19, Phase 20. We've been doing this for 23 weeks, but we skipped a week or two in there. But we've got some great updates for you today, some legal changes and some legislative changes we're going to share. And we've also got a very special guest that's going to share with all of us some of the changes that her company has gone through during this time. How about that? We've got, Jim Morris is back with us, and he'll be on a little bit later to talk about the legal changes. Allison is on vacation, which we all ought to do sometime during this crazy COVID-19. We need a break, so she's out today, but Autumn is here. She's going to be running the questions. Chase is taking care of our technology. And a special guest this week is Susan Elkington. She's the president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Georgetown, and I'll tell you a little bit more about her in just a minute. Seems like I've got a couple of more announcements here. She's going to be talking about returning employees to work safely and what they're doing at Toyota to make that happen. The executive order is back on tap, and of course that came in. We talked a little bit about it last week, but there's been a lot of talk about it this week, and not a lot of changes, but some. PPP still a really important issue. We're going to talk about that, and then we've got some just general updates on some of the other legal issues, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. So let me introduce to you now our special guest. I am so delighted to have Susan Elkington here with us today. Susan is the president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Georgetown, Kentucky. But you know what? She started that job in 2018, but she has a long and illustrious history with Toyota. It is a big deal up in Georgetown. She's, up there, it's an $8 billion operation with almost 10,000 employees. They can produce 550,000 cars a year and 600,000 engines. And Susan, we've got a couple of those cars right in our parking lot today, I'm pleased to say.
We really appreciate it.
The manufacturing facility up in Georgetown is the largest facility for Toyota in the world. And they're producing Camrys and Avalons and Lexus ES 350s and some RAV4s and just a variety of other things. They do standard cars and hybrid cars, which is what I'm driving as a hybrid, and I love it. She actually started with Toyota back in 1998 in Princeton, Indiana. Spent a lot of time there, moving through different jobs, but ended up in Tokyo, in Toyota City, in Japan, which I visited, a great place. She was the head of the production control division for all of Toyota with 53 manufacturing facilities. So I guess the one in Georgetown is just a walk in the park, right, after you've run all 53 of them. But I'm sure it is a huge job. And I happen to be honored to be able to hear Susan speak about what they're doing to get ready, to prepare, get people back and keep them safe. A couple of weeks ago when she spoke to Rotary. And you notice that she is wearing her mask, because at a Toyota, you have to wear your mask all the time in the building unless you are eating. So she's going to keep it on today while she speaks, even though she's in her office. Susan, welcome to the Zoom today. We're delighted you're here. Take it away. We'll get your slides pulled up as you see fit.
All right, Lyle, thank you very much for having me today. As you said, we are required to wear our face coverings at all times. It's one of our protocols, and it's actually one of the most effective protocols that we have in order to keep each other safe. So today, first of all, my safety commitment is to ensure that we have standards that can and will keep our team members healthy and safe here at work and at home. So today I'll talk a little bit about our journey back to returning to work, and some of the protocols that we put in place to ensure that we have a healthy and engaged workforce. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. As Lyle explained, our plant here in Kentucky, it's about 1,300 acres total, 9 million square feet under roof, which is about the equivalent of 100.
I don't think, are people able to see her screen? Or
no.
No? Okay. It says you are sharing.
Aha. Now we can.
We got it.
Okay, maybe a little bit of delay
1,300
there.
acres.
Okay, so our facility here, as Lyle pointed out a little bit, it's an $8 billion investment. We have about 156 football fields under roof here at our site. And our vehicles that we produce is the Camry, the Lexus, the Avalon, the Lexus ES, and the RAV4 hybrid, which we started production in January. So as we were starting production of a brand new vehicle is when COVID hit us all here. So quite a bit of production here at one site. So as we work to really return back to work during COVID-19 pandemic, one of the things that I think is always important to a company is that you always have to go back to your core foundations. What are your values as a company? And then you lay out how you're going to act based on those values. So our basic values of respect for people is one of our 2 core values. The other one is continuous improvement of the Toyota way was really our approach as we went to restart. And we use the basic philosophies of Toyota production systems, principles of problem solving, root cause analysis, and countermeasure implementation, and guided on the resource required by CDC's, occupational OSHA, and then also any state or local laws, and really partnering across the region. And as we did this, we looked at 3 key areas. One is promoting a safe workplace. The other one is adjusting our production operations. And the last one is caring for our team members. So the first thing that we had to do is, as we had team members starting to return to work, we need to ensure that everyone is healthy as they come into our facility. So we do our self-questionnaire screening. We actually have an app that they can do, or they actually can do it at the door, but we try to ask them not to come to work if they're sick. We have a dedicated line that they can call if they have any questions, and they can get guidance, as we do have medical here on site. We do also update this questionnaire as symptoms are updated by CDC to ensure that we have the latest information. Also, we have a temperature check as they return into work. When we first started, about half of our entrances were the handheld thermometers, but now we have all gone to thermal scanning. And the team members just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if they have any other changes or symptoms or exposures. And if they have a thumbs down, then they are quickly guided to a secondary screening location. In addition, we do require protective equipment. Face coverings are required at anywhere on site. The only time that they're allowed to remove their face coverings is when they're eating and drinking, as well as they have 6 feet of social distancing at the same time. In addition, we do allow team members to bring in their own face coverings at this time. And they basically have to cover the face and nose and mouth and cannot get entangled with any of the equipment. And probably I would say currently about 60% of our workforce brings their own, and about 40% wear what we provide here at work. In addition to that, we have to increase our sanitizing efforts. And how we do this is there are key areas. One is our common areas, which our janitorial service does, and we increase the frequency of that. The second is process or workspace. And this is a mixture between both the janitorial services and our individuals. So if it's a piece of equipment that our team members personally hand touch as they're in the process, they are responsible for sanitizing themselves. And if it's a piece of equipment that actually moves around, then we have some additional support to help sanitize that. And then personal sanitation, of course, we always encourage our team members to always wash their hands, use hand sanitizers. We have them at every staircase, up on top, on the bottom, by any normal entrance point, also by any doors. I sort of went through this. So during the shutdown, we did an extensive amount of cleaning. The common areas, one of the key things that we really struggled with was finding cleaners that were environmentally friendly. And as our commitment to the environment, this was very important. So we really, truly worked to ensure that we found environmentally friendly sanitizers. And then lastly is that ownership by the team members to really take care of themselves. We do these protocols to protect others, but then also to protect ourselves. And you can see some photos here about how we do our cleaning. And I do want to make one more comment on this, is that there was a lot of pushback early on about us maintaining some of our safety items, like we have gates where team members would walk into an area where there might be fork trucks. And people were like, oh, we should remove the gates because people have to touch them. We had to be very conscientious and say, no, we're not going to remove the gates because that is a protection from a more, a very hazardous condition of fork truck operations. So then how do we make it to where they can operate it without using their hands, or that if they can't, they had to use their hands, then we always had hand sanitizers right on the other side. We also really focused on social distancing and guidelines. As you can tell here, this would be like a group meeting where the team member having lines to show the difference. Also break areas, we use clear partitions between break areas so that when team members do remove their mask, they can feel comfortable that they're not going to have somebody spitting on them, even though there might be someone close to them. Also making sure meeting areas on the far right-hand side, limiting how many people can be in a conference room, and then also making sure that they're 6 feet apart and where they require to sit. And then we are still in a condition where we require a group size of less than 10, even in a meeting rooms where we could have social distancing of 6 feet, we do not have larger than 10 groups. If we need larger than 10 groups, then we connect them by Teams meetings. Cafeteria the same way. We have grab and go. You think about, restaurants outside and you order and you take things to go. We do have some seating outside. Same thing happens inside our facility and along with our break areas. Now, the question is that, ideally, I told you early on, we want team members that they feel bad not to come to work. That's our number one, or they've had exposure. That's our number one protection. However, if somebody does come to work and starts getting sick while they're at work, we have a very strict protocol that we follow of notifications, isolation of the team member, sanitizing the area, and then a small group that will actually come and get the team member and escort them to our medical. So as we care for our team members, one of the plus things about this large facility is that we do have a medical clinic on site. It includes 2 doctors and 2 nurse practitioners, and also nurses and physical assistants. In addition, for COVID-19, we have added our ability to do testing here. We do the collections here, but we do not actually do the testing of the specimens. We send that to a lab in Lexington, but we do our own tracing. So we created our own software to be able to do tracing. We do all the screening of at our sites. We have a 24-hour RN hotline to support anyone on site, and we have virtual health visits. And the key thing is about this is that we allow any individual at our work site. So we do not limit it just to our Toyota members. We have about 8,000 to 8,500 Toyota team members here, but every day we have between 12 and 13,000 people that come on the site. So anybody that shows symptoms can go to our clinic. And then the key thing is about having open lines of communications. We use an app to download information to our team members, which during the shutdown, I did videos 2 or 3 times a week, just to keep them up to date on what our status was. Before they returned to work, our vice president showed them a video of, hey, this is what to expect when you come back to work. These are the changes that have occurred. Because it was very important for us for our team members to know the condition had changed from when they left. They were very uncertain about their own personal safety, and their family was very uncertain about their own personal safety because they can only imagine what they saw when they left. And so we had to show them that we had made all these changes. In addition, we had different periodic letters, and most importantly, their supervisor would contact every single team member every week by a phone call, just to check in to say, how are you doing? How's your wife doing? Your family doing? And significant others. Now, people are also asking us about how is it from a business standpoint. Well, we didn't really run production for almost 8 weeks, which is a really long time, almost 2 months. However, our sales have not been off as much as we had initially thought maybe it might do. So the month of March was, of course, our biggest hit. We were off about 36%. April was a big month at 53%. But as you can see in July, we were only off about 19%. And we're seeing August sales continue to do better, where actually August is more limited by the fact that we don't have inventory. The SARS, or the annual rate of sales, was supposed to be at 16.5, but currently it's adjusted to about 13.6 for the industry. And the other key thing about Toyota Way is, of course, the respect for people is not just the respect of our team members, but also respecting our communities, because we are a part of that community. So our key areas that we've been really focusing on during this time was about our civic and community. We made a lot of financial donations to the corona response virus. And then the Health and Human Services are donating PPE and manufacturing face shields. And then right now with our education, we are really working with the Kentucky schools, 3 particular areas with Fayette, Scott, and Harrison County, in addition to JAG, Jobs for American Graduates, which is an important group that we have that we do with to help to ensure that they can return to work and return to school and try to share some of our protocols. And as we talked about before with the face shields, we made over 500,000 face shields, or donated over 500,000 face shields from all our plants in North America, with over close to almost 400,000 being produced here in Kentucky. And it was a small amount that we could do. And when we shut down production, our very first thing that we did is all our supervisors went around to try to find any PPE that we had, N95 mask, the different type of suits that we wear, face shields, or anything that we had. And we went through the chamber, which was a great resource for us to be able to donate those to those on the front line. So with that, I'm gonna open it up for questions if we have time. I know, wow, I might have went a little long.
Good work. Thank you very much. We do have some questions. Autumn, you want to share?
Sure. Any advice to help manage costs to implement some of these safety measures? Did the level of investment for COVID readiness meet or exceed your budget expectations?
Yeah, so it is costly, I must say. One of the things I think is important though is that what we have found over time is that we can reduce that amount of cost. The amount of time that it takes to sanitize has greatly been reduced. And then even really working, we've been able to partner with a lot of different businesses in the state of Kentucky and across the country of finding other type of resources that are less costly. I think if I could make the recommendation to other companies about how do you manage cost is you have to look at where would it be most costly for you if you have a situation. So for us, we felt it was very important not to ensure that we don't have breakouts inside the facility. So we did a lot more investment on how do we ensure that sick people do not come into work, and making it easy for them to self-declare if they've been exposed, and then also how do we help them to do that. Also, you got to know what are the things that are most effective. And like I said, I think one of the most effective things that we have found is actually the face coverings. And then if people are going to be coming closer together, if we have a protocol, they're less than 3 feet apart, or they're going to be going to multiple groups, they actually wear a face shield on the top of their face mask. So I think it's important from a cost standpoint is, really working with other businesses to find better, to buy things in bulk as much as possible. The second thing is that really figuring out for your particular industry, what is the most cost, where is it most important for you to invest? And maybe not everything is necessary for your particular business.
Great, okay. And are you having issues with not having enough employees? And if so, how are you handling that?
Yes, workforce shortage is always a concern across the board. And the situation that, we've had a production shutdown for 1 week. It's the normal shutdown that we do every summer. And as team members had time off, their exposure externally is much higher than their exposure internally. And so we had an increase after that of people that had exposures during their time off. And so one of the plus things about workforce shortage for Toyota, we're a big company, we're the big fish in the pond, so we typically can hire maybe a little bit quicker than some of the other businesses. However, we've been also trying to help our suppliers who are not necessarily in the same condition. Some of the things that they have found is, attendance bonuses are typically a plus. One of the things I think is most important is that you show the care and concern. I know it's not always easy whenever production is, you're just trying to focus on production or trying to focus on just getting through the day, but just asking people how they feel and how they care is very important in that retention. We're all stressed. We're all very, very stressed. And then also there's a lot of our companies, the suppliers are working with multiple hiring agency and not just sticking with one, because different ones have different sources of employment that they can search for.
Awesome. Okay. How have your communication updates changed since employees have returned to work?
One is that we do definitely use our electronic apps more than we ever did before. We did invest in also some large screen TVs because previously a group leader or supervisor would talk to their group, which would be between around 25 people would be in their group. But as I told you, we can't communicate amongst 25 people because we can't keep them 6 feet apart. So now we've been able to add some larger screens to allow distancing and still be able to communicate throughout the facility. You know, I know that's an additional cost, but I think that you have to use different means of communication than what you did before. You don't want to be handing out papers a lot of times. You don't want to be having large groups in a conference room. We also, you know, we already had handheld speakers. We use those quite a bit also. And then also what we focus on in our communications have shifted a little bit more, really focusing on healthy at home and at work. And then also just understanding what the status of the business is.
How are you all dealing with childcare needs?
So we are lucky enough that we do have a childcare facility on site. We were one of the first facilities in Kentucky that was allowed to reopen, but we have very strict protocols over there as we do use a national chain, and we were able to learn from other locations. Some of the other things that we do from where we're seeing an issue related to childcare is as kids are doing virtual school. So we are hoping to be able to provide a supervised service for our team members to where we're not going to be tutorial in nature, but at least supervised, and then being able to follow similar type of protocols that we do at our daycare center, which we've had really good success with. But it is a challenge, and we do allow team members to take unpaid leave to be able to support if they cannot find available daycare.
So I have a question about, with it being hot outside and people having to wear PPE, are there any additional breaks given or any additional accommodations for employees to be comfortable while working?
Yeah, so each of our facilities around the region have a slightly different protocol based on where the plant is located at. So we have like casting facilities where it's 120 degrees inside the facility that they always have to worry about heat anyways, and they follow their protocols and their break schedules. Our facility here in Kentucky, we were able, our plant is temperature controlled, it's not humidity controlled. So have been able through this summer to be able to lower the set point of that cooling. So we do have the plant a couple degrees cooler than what we usually have. We have really focused on hydration, ensuring that the team members have access to water and provide them with water bottles and so that they can have their refills and be able to do that. We have not gotten to the point of our plant temperature condition to where we needed to add more breaks. But that is one of the protocols that if a facility gets to a certain point temperature-wise, that they do require additional breaks.
With the Kentucky state travel restrictions and recommendations, how are you addressing employee personal travel?
For employee personal travel, if an employee chooses to go and travel into one of the states that have the recommendation for quarantine, the team members have to honestly be able to say that during their time in that location that they maintained 6 feet social distancing and they wear their they wear their face coverings in public. And if they do not do that, then they are required to quarantine at home unpaid until they reach the milestone for us to be able to do testing with confidence and be able to return to work. And I know people always ask, oh, they're just going to lie. bad thing is a lot of people post things on social media when they're on vacation, and we see it as falsification, and it's an item that can lead to termination.
Got it. Okay.
Boy, some great questions here and good answers.
Yeah.
I think these are the things you're facing are the things all of us are facing. Anything else, Autumn?
Yeah, what has been the biggest employee concern as far as the safety measures go?
One of the big ones that we have is there's so much on social media and so much on the internet that, there's, like the face coverings. They're like, oh, it causes health problems. We're breathing in our own CO2, and, we're going to, so you have to deal with all that side of it. The other part of it is, from a safety standpoint, with wearing the face coverings, one is dealing with the heat. The second one is dealing with glasses fogging up. So we are required to wear safety glasses in addition to our face mask when we're in production. And so if anybody wears glasses with face coverings, you know how difficult that is. So that has been a huge challenge for us, because we don't want to address one issue with the COVID and then cause another issue. So we have many different measures that we have taken to be able to find and match for different team members to be able to work without their face coverings. The second big thing that we've been really challenged with is more about team members' behaviors outside the facility and making good choices outside the facility. So we have been doing a heavy campaign with our team members to be an example in our communities of what it means to be safe and to keep others safe. And so it's not always easy. We see some of the same issues that you see the governor talk about based on just age groups and pockets of individuals and what their willingness and risk levels are versus others.
Great. That's all I have.
Okay. You're on mute, Lyle.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I said, Susan, it's hard to wear this mask all the time and speak and everything. My goodness, I did it just to join you. But thank you so much for speaking with us today. Your challenges are what everybody's facing, and you've really articulated it so crisply. We appreciate you being with us, and we wish you the best of luck. Keep making those awesome vehicles. We appreciate that too.
Yeah, I think, if I could just make one final comment, it is so important to show the care for your workers. The workers will do so, we call our team members, they will do so much if they feel like they're part of a team and they're in this together. So just spending that time, which when we're also busy, is so easy not to spend the time to have those conversations. And definitely that is probably another challenge, is how do you have conversations when you're both wearing face coverings and 6 feet apart, but you got to find ways to have that connection.
Wow, thank you. You're so right. And we've just got to show we care about people, and we've got to show we really are trying to take care of them, that we really are concerned about their safety. I think that's a great message that every business needs to get out to their people. And you said you were doing those broadcasts to them 3 times a week. That's huge. So they can see the changes that are being made, and their family can see that you're going to try to take care of their moms and dads and sisters and brothers when they're at work.
And that's one of the things that we found more than anything else was, if you saw when we did a news article or something, that it was the family members that were more scared than the actual workers. So it
Absolutely.
was, and because if you get COVID, you're going to bring it home to your family. So it's important that we recognize that it's not just the one person that's coming to your workplace, it's their whole family.
Wow. Well, you have a great day. Thanks so much for being here. And if we can help you anyway, just reach out.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
You bet. Take care. Hey. We got the whole group here. Well, thanks everybody for hanging with us. We've got a great crowd today. Next up is Mr. Jim Morris. And Jim, we're glad you're here. I know you've got a lot to share. Jim has not only got a lot of things to update us on, but we have enjoyed all week, every week, a lot of people are calling us with a variety of questions, and we use that to help drive what we're going to talk about next week. But we decided this week we'd actually ask you all some questions while we're on here. So Jim, we've developed a couple of polls that he's going to be sharing. And we hope you'll give us, it won't take long, and we'll give you some feedback. A lot of them were set up so they're anonymous because we're not trying to figure out about your business. We're just trying to figure out what's going on out there. So Jim, welcome. Glad you're here. Take it away.
Thank you. So yeah, a little hint for anybody dealing with Zoom. Don't have anybody kick you out of a meeting because of an issue and then try to bring it back, because Zoom doesn't like that. It wouldn't let me back in under any name, anywhere, anyhow. So I had to fake a way in under my iPad. So this is going to be a little bit different here. My iPad's here. My computer, as everybody knows, is where I have all of my information. And so unfortunately this week it falls on Autumn to advance because my advancement of the slides won't do a darn thing. So hopefully you can or don't show her your logins. Sorry, Autumn. I think having too many hosts was the issue, but then when I tried to get back in, it kicked me out and bounced me every which way you can imagine. So anyway, I'm here. We're going to run through this. I have a couple of fun questions and some information to share with you. This week was a little bit less on the crisis side in terms of updates, not in terms of what you need to know. But there hasn't been any answers given. So I went ahead and did a few questions that I thought would be important. So let's go ahead and go with the first poll question. There's a two-part question here. Make sure you answer it. If you don't, we're going to kick you out of the meeting. I know we can do that now. Just kidding. So I've got two polls up there, and I'd like everybody to answer those. Please.
And they're coming.
And I'm answering too. All right, so we're going to let that sit for a little bit. Autumn, you let me know when we have enough answers that we're ready to go. That's probably good, don't you think? Or are they still pouring in?
They're still pouring in. Give me just a second.
All right.
All right, I think we're good.
So I will tell you the reason why we want to know this is, you know, I just wanted to kind of get you used to clicking on the screen. The next one is my personal favorite. So the results that I see, and I'm going to have to be reaching in front of me, and I apologize. Like I said, I'm on my iPad. 87% said the legal, legislative, and guidance. 40% said they wanted to learn new things. Not one. I almost did the boss made me just so we'd have somebody vote on that, but I didn't. Speaker lineups and CEC credits each got 7%. The next one, hey, it's good to see that we've got a group of loyal people. The most of the people, 18%, every single one of these webinars. Congratulations. I almost missed one, the one I'm in right now. The 55% missed a couple. 17% have been to at least 10, and 9% have been to at least 5. Only 2%. This is your first one. First of all, welcome. This is not normally this disjointed, and I apologize ahead of time. We usually have things pretty well smoothed out, but I messed this up by trying to add the polls and then having too many people. So, okay, I'm going to roll through a few of these updates. So let's go on to the next screen, and I'm going to do these, and then we'll go back to the polls here in a second. So I want to give you a couple of updates from last week. We talked about the presidential executive orders last week. There were 4 of them. I broke it down onto one page because honestly, there's not a lot of guidance. The only one that there really is on the federal unemployment continuation, and there's a little bit on the payroll tax holiday. I'm going to start from the bottom up and work my way up. I know I did it in reverse order, but I just wanted to cover the ones that I really don't have anything for you. Feel free to throw questions in. I need everybody to know I'm going to have some issues in reading the chats because I'm not on my computer, so I don't have my chat in front of me, so I'll have to have those read to me. On the student loan relief, this is basically through the end of the year, 0%. There's not much to cover for businesses. I'm just putting it on there. The renter and homeowner assistance. Again, he encouraged the federal government to come up with ways of avoiding eviction or foreclosure related to government-funded housing or rentals. The top two are the critical two. The first one is the federal unemployment continuation. We told you that was going to be the $400 a week if the state funded $100. Certain states, Kentucky and Pennsylvania, were the biggest squeaky wheels, indicated that they would be incapable of doing so and told the federal government that they would not participate at all. So, and I'm not sure how this is going to shake out because it's an executive order, but yet they're talking about possibly changing the order. What they've said is they're going to reduce it to $300 as long as the employee receives at least $100 in funding from any state. So basically what that will be is any employee that you have that has been on unemployment, as long as they're receiving $100, they will continue to receive the $300 extra from the federal government instead of requiring an additional $100 from the state government. The problem with this is right now they're not sure how that's going to fall because it does not include self-employment, does not include independent contractor, does not include gig workers, part-time employees that don't meet the $100 threshold, and several others. So we'll have to wait to see how that's going to flesh out. I don't have any update because this actually literally was discussed on Friday, and they're saying that they may have to do these things, but they're not sure how. Additional guidance is going to be forthcoming. There's none right now. Also, this does not expand the PUA, which if you've been on these, that pandemic unemployment insurance, does not expand that. Not insurance, assistance. It does not expand that, and it does not expand any of the federal unemployment insurance. It must be tied to your state's qualification. Problem for Kentucky, we've had so many issues with our unemployment and people not getting it, and the work share, not work share, that I doubt that we're going to have this smoothed out anytime soon. This is supposed to take effect immediately, but yet we don't have any update yet. So the payroll tax holiday, that's the deferment, and I keep bolding that. You need to let your employees know that unless this is adopted as a final, the payroll tax holiday is nothing but a delay. It is a delay of your payment of any of the amounts. Now, there's been a lot of discussion, and I'd like to pop up the poll if I could. That was, give me just a second. Poll number 6, please, Chase or Autumn. No, that maybe it switched. Oh yeah, that's it. Sorry. So I'd like to have your answer to this because I want to cover that. And this is important because based upon your answer, there's going to be some issues for certain people. And so I wanted to walk through this. And whenever you feel like that's ready, Chase, we can just pop that up once we have the bulk of answers in. While that's coming in, I'll go ahead and explain. There's no guidance on whether this is mandatory. Question was asked at one of the pandemic updates of the president as to whether this was going to be mandatory. But the journalist that questioned it did not word it very well. It was very confusing, and the president kind of punted on it, and I understood why, because it didn't really clarify. So the polls are in. The vast majority of you are going to wait and see. It's a good approach. Continue withholding as if no order was entered is the second most popular, and the third one was the one that I put in there, which is no clue. Although there is one of you that's going to do nothing, and one that says that you're going to pay out everything and deal with it later. The reality is, I think the way this is going to be established, what I'm hearing and what I'm reading in the tea leaves is the pay out everything to the employee and deal with it later is what you're probably going to be ordered to do. The continuing withholding is not going to be an option because this is designed to be a holiday for the employees And if you continue to withhold everything as if no order was entered, you're going to be on the backside because this was designed to flow the money through, and you're going to get a tax break is the way it's going to work out. So believe it or not, the one of you that said pay out everything to the employee and deal with it later, congratulations. I think you've got the right answer, and there's only one. That is going to end up being the ultimate answer. Right now, the proper answer is the 38% of you that said continue to wait and see. I see that as being the proper answer because we don't have the appropriate guidance. Do not withhold anything right now. I'm sorry. Do not pay anything right now. Continue to withhold because until we get the follow-up directive as of September 1st, he did mention potential of August 1st, but it's not going to happen. You can't get the money back out. It may be retroactive where you can cut your tax withholdings and send it to your employees instead. But for right now, continue to withhold until you get further direction. But the end result will be you have to pay out everything. That's going to be an increased cost to the employer to figure out how to do that and to run your taxes the right way. And I get that, but that's going to be the outcome. All right, so if we can advance to the next slide real quick. The IRS, I want to give an update. I do not do taxes. I think I've told you that from day one. I want everybody to understand, don't call me for your taxes. I work with accountants all the time. I can work with your accountant on it, but I will not do your taxes because I don't even like to do my own, and I don't do my own. So, but it's critical for everybody to understand the PPP, the EIDL, and the PUA. If you don't know what any of that stands for, you haven't been watching my updates. But the PPP, Paycheck Protection Plan, the EIDL, the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Grant monies are what we're going to be focused on. And the PUA is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, the federal additional money, the $600 that you get. The impact on tax returns, we haven't talked about this at all, but this is a huge issue that is growing as we get closer to the end of the year for companies. So I wanted to walk through this with you so that you understand kind of what's going on. All right, so if you meet the question's been asked, if you meet the criteria for loan forgiveness, will the government tax you on the free money? The answer is not directly, but now it's become a little bit more complicated. The IRS did, in fact, issue a notice clarifying, quote unquote, how the forgiven amount will be treated. The problem is that their clarification basically made it really, really difficult to follow, and it's going to create some real issues. So the CARES Act has an 1106B. We've talked about this week 2, week 3, week 4 at length. It talked about certain monies being relieved. We've talked about the PPP money, so I'm not going to go back through it. But you know that it's payroll, 60%, 40%. Some of it can be mortgage interest, your leases, your phone, utilities, electric, gas, so on and so forth. We've talked about all of that. But then what they said is this quote, this notice clarifies that no deduction is allowed under the code for an expense that is otherwise deductible if the payment of the expense results in forgiveness of a covered loan pursuant to 1106B of the CARES Act, and the income associated with the forgiveness is excluded from gross income. I'm not going to read the rest of it. Basically what this means is if the forgiven loan isn't included in the taxable income, the expenses paid for with the given loan aren't able to be included in the tax deduction. It does have a big impact on your 2020 tax bill. So let's roll on to the next slide and I'll try to explain this. You're going to need accountant's advice on this. So we talked about the typical business payroll, rent, mortgage, and so on. Without that, you do owe more taxes. So hypothetically, let's use it. It's a really simple $100,000 PPP loan. You use it for payroll. You received $100,000 for free, so I'm not complaining too much. But businesses will lose the 21% corporate tax rate that you have on that $100,000. So you may have thought you're going to get $100,000 and you pay that out to your employees and there's not going to be any tax hit. The reality is if you pay pay $100,000 out to your employees on a $100,000 PPP loan, you owe 21% taxes. So you're going to end up with an additional tax rate, and you need to be taking that into consideration at the end of the year. So instead of a 100,000, you end up with 79. If you paid the 100 out, you're going to have to come up with the 21 somewhere along the way to cover that. So that's an issue that needs to be considered for any business, and it's going to be a surprise at the end of the year with a dip in your income. So make sure you're following along and you're covering that. The AICPA is challenging that. They're asking for guidance. They pointed out that the CARES Act specifically says it is not intended to be an issue related to deductions and so on. You're supposed to get that money free and clear. So they are really trying to challenge it. I don't know where they stand. The rules are in flux daily, hourly, minutely. I checked right before I got on to see if there's any new changes. There are not. But this is going to be a problem unless it gets adjusted. So until then, I'm suggesting to my clients, withhold the 21%, don't pay it out, or be prepared to pay it out in some other way, pay it out or hold it in some other way so that you have that money set aside for a rainy day. The EIDL, this is the opposite issue. The EIDL grant, the $10,000 that we've talked to, $1,000 for each employee up to 10, that is a grant. There is zero guidance right now from the IRS. However, the IRS has issued in the past that any grants that are given, any forgiveness of an SBA loan is in fact taxable income. So if you received a grant, it's taxable. But then here's the however, and it's the second bullet point there. Businesses will be able to deduct any deductible expenses paid with the grant. So if you do inventory, rent, etc., you can deduct that. So you may end up with a zero tax hit, but you do need to understand the impact of the grant and how to properly apply that toward rent and other aspects. And you're going to need to trace some of this through an accountant. That's why I said this is going to be very complex for businesses, and I think it's about time we start talking about the tax implications. So the last one on this, I'm sorry, there's one other bullet after this. The employee retention credit, those are eligible for people with less than 500 employees. Let's go ahead and roll to the next screen. That's just the background. This is where we talked about the impact of it. The tax credits reduce tax liability on a dollar-for-dollar basis. So if you're paying an employee, I put the example out here, you're going to get a $3,000 tax credit. It's up to 50% of a $10,000 per employee, so it's $5,000 for each employee, and you get to claim that on your quarterly Form 941. You can do that now. You don't have to wait till the end of the year. The employee retention credit is actually the best of all of these tax things right now because it's money back in your pocket. If you kept your employees on, you get that tax credit. You get to declare that. We talked about the pros and cons of all of this, but I just wanted to walk you through it. Unemployment impact. This is the last one on this slide. I just wanted to walk through it with you so you guys understood where that is. If you applied for unemployment, you know that this is in fact taxable. Our state actually asked people, did you want to have it withheld or not? And people actually went through and voluntarily selected whether they did or did not want to have taxes withheld. If you or any of your employees did not have taxes withheld, they need to understand that they will be hit with a tax and they have to do the estimated tax payments throughout the year, or they'll be hit with all of it at once at the end of the year. But all federal and state monies that you receive are in fact taxed. So that's a little hit that people are not paying attention to. So I wanted to throw that in there and have you understand that as well. So I have a couple other polls that I wanted to address, and then I wanted to ask a couple at the end as well. So we talked about the COVID-19 federal assistance money. So I wanted to throw out in front of everybody poll number 4 for a second. And so this question talks about the type of federal monies that you received or federal assistance. A couple of things I want to walk through with this. This is just for information, but I want to walk through with you. Remember, if you're a mid-sized company over 500 and you receive federal monies at all on a loan from the SBA, you need to be extraordinarily careful with your union and any anti-union, and that's a bad word, but any efforts to avoid union, because as we talked about in week 3, there is a poison pill hidden in the mid-size business loans, not the PPP, not the small business. There is a hidden poison pill in the CARES Act for anyone over 500 that accepts any money from the federal government. Because if you did, I'm gonna finish this thought, then we'll do the poll results. If you did the mid-size, you effectively allowed all union efforts, and you will not challenge the union at all. And so that was a huge issue, red flag I raised, I think, in week 5 to be careful about. It's a big issue, so just be aware of that. So on the poll results, I'm really surprised. It says that 52% or 39 people did not receive any PPP money or any other grant money. And I lost the poll somehow. Wait, there they are. There, I came back. That's really surprising, unless you're not answering for your business and you're just answering for an individual, which could have been in there, because the vast majority of businesses applied or they didn't qualify, and I should have added that in there as well. Only one of you did the retention credit. I think I know who you are. On that particular, they may have won in all of this because the retention credit ended up with the least amount of issues in the long run, with the most benefit without getting harassed by the federal government. I did see a poll, or I'm sorry, a comment that said that this year was an absolute disaster with regard to the PPP, because if you received more than $150,000, your name's out there, the total amount of what you got is out there, the total number of employees is out there. I think that's kind of an invasion of privacy. I think it was unfair what they did, because they never told any of us what the results would be if we did it. And yet afterwards they said that they were going to do that. The PPP EIDL, congratulations, because I know of very few people that actually qualified for the EIDL before it went to special place, because it didn't have any real support. The SBA was so overloaded, and then they immediately ran out of money and went to only farming and agriculture. So if you got both or you got the EIDL, that's awesome. And the PPP, that's what I would have expected, is a large number. Now I want to get into a few of the things that actually impact you, but I want to do one that hopefully will bring a little humor first. So let's throw up poll number 2. I just want to see if you're actually awake. And this is my sarcasm. All right, so hand on your heart. Are you wearing pajamas right now? And I want to know the truth. This is one that, you know, if you can't answer this or you can't laugh at yourself, I'm really sad. So shouldn't take long for the answers, or you're not going to answer, but I even gave you all an out at the bottom. You literally can plead the 5th on advice of counsel. I did that. So while this is coming up, I know this is a little silly.
He wanted to talk to me, that he thought he had, and he wanted to go get tested for COVID. And I said, so tell me one thing that you...
Somebody, can we mute that? There we go. All right. So let's pop that up there. And we could probably go to the next slide too, and we can start throwing some questions in there.
They didn't belong on the call, but it sounded, Jim, it sounded like they were right on topic. They were talking.
Yeah, they were on topic.
COVID.
All right, so I'm disappointed more of you did not decline to answer on the advice of counsel, because that's exactly what I told all of you to do. But that's okay, because never is a great answer. I will tell you that I have run a couple of other Zoom meetings and I was giving someone instruction on how not to run a meeting and walking them through, you know, turn your video on, turn your video off, let's make sure you have it all right. And hand to the heart, the guy that's on this call with me training for the next day where we're going to have all these other people on there, all of a sudden pushes his camera to the ceiling, and I'm like, I wonder whether I should turn Dave's video off. And then, you know, he stands up and he turns it down really quick. He stands up and I see his feet and his legs, and I'm like, oh no. And before I could do anything, yes, he's standing there in his underwear and forgot to turn it off. So the commercial where the guy's doing it, the rumors you guys have heard about people going to the bathroom, I swear to you, I was sitting there telling him how to do this, how to mute himself, how to turn off his camera, and darned if he didn't do it. So I almost threw up here another question that was, all right, how many of you had a very serious issue during one of your webinars where somebody did that, but I didn't put it up there? So that was just a humor one. I do want to ask you a few real questions as we roll through this. So, and I'm also, we can pepper in some other real questions as well about anybody's legal updates or questions that they want to do. So what I'd like to do, Autumn and Chase, is I want to throw up the question of everybody's role so we kind of know who everybody is. So it's poll 3. And while we're doing that, if we have a question that's come in, let's go ahead and run throw out a frequent or one of the questions out of the chat to me since I can't see them, and I'll answer some.
Not so many questions, Jim. It's more just people saying things they actually had to work every day anyway, or they've had to get dressed every day because they're going in to work. Question here. It's about unemployment insurance from the governor. Not giving updates. Are they still working through the backlog? I'm hearing people filed in May, but they've still not received anything, just getting the weekly robocalls.
Yeah, so interesting update on that from me, or from my perspective. I have a call to the unemployment from, I believe I told you all this back on April 3rd or April 4th. I have never to this day gotten a call back. So we're now on 4.5 months and I've never gotten a call back from the unemployment office. So we are waiting for an answer. I have employees that have not been paid since March the 15th, March the 9th, that did get, some got a little bit of payment, some didn't get any. I have some people who are in identical positions submitted at the same time who got it, and others who didn't. And of course, we've talked about the work share where some people have received it, other people have not. And once they got my Open Records Act demand for documentation of all of those that did or did not, that very next day they issued a proclamation canceling and requesting that the registrar remove 787 KAR1:350E from the roll book, saying they no longer needed to use Kentucky WorkShare. That's not done. I'm not done with it. I'm still gathering the documentation and information, and trust me, for those that shared with me, hey, we got it and we don't know how, but we're afraid not to share it or to share it. I didn't share any of your information. I would never do that because at least you got it. But we are tracking down for everyone who did not, because it's really sad what they're doing to people, families that can't afford not to have it. So just thought I would share that with you. That's a real issue. All right, so this doesn't surprise me, but I thought I would throw it out there just so we know who's on the phone with you. So it's HR people joining this, business development, marketing are only one each, accounting 6 people, business owners 6 people, and other 6 people. 77% are HR. So just wanted you guys to know kind of what you're dealing with there. I'd like to throw up poll 5, and I'll answer another poll or another question if there are any, and I just saw one and I'm fine trying to answer it. I think it gets into the weeds a little bit, but throw it out there. Let's try it. So this one, sorry about the typo. It's in there twice, but basically don't answer with the first one because you know that's the question. All right. If you do, we know you're not paying attention. What's the biggest issue you're facing for your business right now? And then the next question is, which of the following would you like to see more of in our weekly webinars? And that was really important to us because we try to tailor this to what you all are doing, what you all need. So the second one is, you know, do you want more HR guidance, less HR guidance, more legal, less legal, more guests, less guests, more polling, less polling, more Q&A, less Q&A? So these are all on here. Let me know what your thoughts are. Those are important to us so that we can gear this to what you want to do week in and week out. Go ahead and let's go with another question. And I'm fine with the last one as well. I know it's a little bit complicated, but with going under the 50, I saw a little bit of it.
Right. So let me see if I can get all this for you, Jim. Recently reduced headcount to below 50. Can you advise on who the authorized officer from last week's slide is or could be? They need to find out how to not financially impact the company any further if we end up with numerous employees that have to be out for childcare issues. They realize that the first 10 days are not covered by the employer through their paid time off. Also, there's an assumption here that anyone who test positive or passed a quarantine would still be required to receive the 80 hours of sick pay from the company.
So let's start with the last one first. So yes, if you have an employee, we talked about this quite a bit. If you have an employee that tests positive or an employee who is requested to self-quarantine, even if they don't test positive, if you have an employee who went to a hotspot, and like we saw with Toyota, you do have to allow them to self-quarantine. Now, I wanted to point out an interesting thing with Toyota because it meshes with what I pointed out last week, which is, yeah, you want to push your employees who voluntarily go to a hotspot that they shouldn't be paid to stay at home. And you notice their question was, did you self-quarantine? Did you stay away? Did you social distance? Did you stay within 6 feet? And so on. The one question that didn't get asked, and I didn't get to get in there and ask it, is what if the person answered the question and said, no, I didn't self-quarantine, or I didn't stay away from somebody 6 feet. I went to every party I could, or I went to every gathering I could, or maybe it's a legitimate reason. It's not a partying situation. I went. So the question then is, what do you do with that person? And the answer is, I still don't know. And I was hoping to hear what Toyota's doing with it. Not that I know that it's a right or wrong answer because there's no legal guidance, but the reality is the FFCRA is set up. If the employee is advised to self-quarantine, it doesn't say that they voluntarily or involuntarily went to a hotspot area. It says if an employee is quarantined, advised to self-quarantine, tests positive, has to take care of a child, is experiencing symptoms. I don't have the 6 things memorized. I should by now. But basically, if they meet one of those, then they qualify for the sick leave and they qualify for the EFMLEA. The issue is, what if they expose themselves of their own negligence? The answer right now is Congress hasn't caught up with reality. So you keep having an issue right now with if somebody goes to Disney World and they need to quarantine when they come back and they answer the question saying, nope, I didn't social distance, you can't punish them because now if they get a notice from a doctor saying self-quarantine, they're self-quarantining at the direction of a doctor. So we raised that issue last week. I think it's an unfair issue, but it's there. The question, some of that did get too far into the weeds, and we'd have to sit down and go over all of the details that relate to that, because that's getting into legal guidance on a specific issue. But with regard to going under 50 people, if you're under 50 people, you no longer qualify. So if you no longer qualify, it doesn't have that you were at 50 at the beginning of the FFCRA or at the CARES Act. It literally says if you're less than 50, then you don't qualify for those two provisions that I put up on the slides last week. As far as an authorized person, that gets a little bit into the weeds, but it actually literally defines it as within the FFCRA itself. So I hope that was helpful, but some of that gets so far in that I can't really do it because it's basically me giving legal advice over a webinar without a client contract. All right, so I know the biggest challenge facing, this is what I would have expected, and this is going to be a huge issue going forward. Employee morale is a big issue, and HR professionals, this is what you're going to be dealing with. You're going to have a whole lot of issues with depression, with malaise, with people not wanting to do their job, people in their pajamas not realizing what they can do today. Same thing, different day, over and over and over again. So that really doesn't surprise me. It does concern me greatly, and it's where HR is going to have to start looking. We've been focusing week in and week out, and I don't mean just on this webinar. I mean all of you who are in this profession. You focus week in and week out on one thing, which is complying with the law right now, because you're drinking from a fire hose, as I call it. All these laws, all these regulations, all of the restrictions, the governor not giving any updates since May 11th, all of the frustration of the governor's mandates closing and reopening 10, 50, back to 10, all of that without any other explanation jerks you around, but it also jerks your employees around. While you're dealing with all these legal things, you're ignoring without, it's not your fault, but the vast majority of you have to ignore the frustration that each of your employees are facing. They are stressed, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're frustrated, they don't know what's going to happen. One of the other things in here is the government restriction and then the lack of customers. Well, that also impacts your employee morale as well. So one of the things that you need to start doing is looking at your employee assistance programs, your EAPs, and start beefing those up or encouraging your employees, even those that are staying at home, to address it. One of the things that I've raised serious concern about with the schools being remote, I think that we're going to have a huge influx at some point in the future, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but you're going to have a huge influx of divorces, of assault charges, and of child abuse charges, because people are stuck at home and they become violent, they do things that they shouldn't. There's going to be a lot of problems with that. So I wanted to throw that up there for you as HR professionals, because sometimes you forget, as you're drinking from a fire hose of regulations and legal strategies and money coming in, and we need to spend it in the next 8 weeks, 24 weeks. How do I comply with this? What am I doing with the taxes? How do I put this in the personnel file? Sometimes we forget that these are all people, and they no longer get to go to lunch together, and they no longer get to have birthday lunches, and they no longer get to gather for a Christmas or a pool party or anything else work-related or even socially. So you need to start thinking of things to do, and we've started to put people, for example, we've sent them care packages without any reason for it, just to thank them. And we got, we did a silly questionnaire, kind of like some of these, but we did a questionnaire survey monkey to figure out their favorite food, their favorite restaurant, their favorite alcohol. And then we put together a care package. Yeah, I know, I said alcohol, sorry. But we put together a care package for some people because they were kind of shut in, and we have remote working across the country for it. And so we shipped this all over the place. People loved it. I put that up there because you all need to start thinking of interesting ways to engage your employees in different things. Be careful with doing that. I think I gave you a hypothetical after-hour happy hour issue that turned into a sexual harassment. over the Zoom meeting because people started getting sloshy drunk and started saying things. Not a smart idea. Be careful with your social drinking Zoom parties because they're still working if you invite them. Not that you're paying them, but it becomes a work related, so you need to remind people of their social requirements and not engaging in sexually harassing. All right, the two things that are the things that people want to see. Whoops, that popped. Where'd that go? Chase, did you dump that?
I didn't.
There it is. All right. The second one, I appreciate the responses on this because we wanted to see how people are looking at more legal. I wish I had more legal this week. I looked at it yesterday and I was like, everybody needs it. Unfortunately, right now we're in this thing where Congress is on vacation. I've told you how I feel about them leaving without fixing things. The rest of us are working like crazy. They went on vacation. She called them back, but she only called them back last night to work on the Postal Service bill that she's going to start pushing, not anything related to the PPP extension, the unemployment, or anything else, but she is forcing everyone back to pass the postal so that they can do, so that they can force them to do the remote voting, or I'm sorry, mail-in voting, but not anything else. That frustrates me. I couldn't give you any more legal guidance this week because there is none to give. EEOC, nothing. The CDC does 10 a day, but I thought that if you're older, their guidance was to stay away from people. If you run a business, their guidance was to clean it. I mean, I looked at their guidance and I was like, I'm not going to waste your time on it. So I didn't. The OSHA has nothing. The SBA has nothing. The Treasury has nothing. The IRS I gave you. So the legal, I can only give you legal. I could have made up stuff, but then you guys will be upset next week when I said it was fake. So it's interesting to see the more or less on things and the more or less on the question and answer and the polling. We'll work on some more polling. I just wanted to see where that was, and that's important for our people to kind of figure out what we're doing. I do have one I wanted to find out on the Kentucky side. I'd like to throw up poll 8, and I'm still going to answer all the questions that people have. Any more questions that you want to throw out there? This is the Kentucky's work share that I presented to you, I guess, week 6 to week 16 and week 19 to 21. Don't quote me on that. We wanted to know what your response is to this because it has been one of the hottest issues that I've gotten since we had Mr. Benton and Mr. Muncie, Mr. McNamara on our call where they said absolutely nothing was wrong with their website. I do want everybody to know that apparently Mr. McNamara is suing the Unemployment Insurance Commission. So if you want to read anything about anything that happened, it's really interesting because it's all out there. And there's a whole lot of politics with it too, as to how he got the job, why he's in the job, why he got fired, how he got fired, and supposedly what things he was trying to stop along the lines of what I was trying to point out at the time when they said, no, there's no problem. But the Kentucky is becoming quite a problem, and it's not just here. It's being addressed nationwide that Kentucky has all of these issues. It's actually quite embarrassing how bad and how outdated our payment systems are, and the inequality of the way people are being treated. So I thought we would find out how you're doing with this, and then I have another poll after that. Yeah, and I think that the answer given, 70% said that they didn't reduce hours at all. That doesn't surprise me because with all of the confusion, a lot of people decided not to reduce hours until they had the answer. And or a lot of people just either laid off or didn't reduce. I do like the number, percentage sign, number, dollar sign. That's where I would be because a lot of people are frustrated by what they did. Work share, what is work share? Welcome to the meeting. You must be one of the ones that this is your first time on the call. Welcome, first time caller. That's been a discussion point throughout about the monies that should have been available to workers if their hours were reduced to part-time hours. So, all right, I got one more question I wanted to ask, and while this one's up, I'll answer whatever is up there. I do want to go to poll 7, just to let you all know how things are going.
And this one is anonymous as well.
And is this the last of the polls? Did I skip any?
Let me check.
I think this is it.
I think so.
You want a question from the chat?
Yes. I want as many questions from the chat as I can. I wanted to make this a question and answer, and I will be staying as long as any questions are out there, unless they get too legal. Again, a couple of caveats I haven't covered in a couple of weeks. One, I give information the best I know. You can't rely on my information unless we have an agreement, because I don't represent any of you at this point. Well, some of you, you understand. But I do the best I can with the information I have, and if you ask questions on the fly, I try. I may have to come back later, but this is all just trying to get information sharing because of how crazy this whole situation is. And I do apologize about this week. It's been disjointed because I don't have control of the webinar and so on. Normally I'd be answering these questions all the way through and we get them all, but I think it's gone as smooth as can be with me being hooked up to 4 different things at once and Chase and Autumn being dumped on. So great job, guys. All right, let's go.
All right, so can an employee take intermittent child care leave while their child is at home doing NPI? They're saying approximately 2 hours are needed per day.
All right, so the answer is it depends. Next. Just kidding. All right, it does. It does depend, and we covered this a couple of times, beginning of August, end of July. But let me roll through it because as everybody's going back to work or going back to school, this is really critical. So we gave 3 different examples. One is where a school says we're closed. Non-traditional instruction is NTI for those that don't know. Hold on just a second. Non-traditional learning or non-traditional instruction. So it depends on this. The example I gave, and I could be wrong with the jurisdiction, so please don't rely on which jurisdiction, but the example I gave was Jefferson and Fayette is closed by mandate. Everything is non-traditional learning. Scott County and Bowling Green, Warren County, I believe, were every other day. And they required 1 day in school, the next day at home, all Fridays, or 1 day a week, doesn't matter what day, was your basic homework day and teacher in service day. Then there's the one that was Covington and I don't remember who else, that had a option. And the way I explained this was, if your school is closed, we talked about it again last week, if your school is mandated closed, the FFCRA applies. If your school gives you an option, your school is not closed. I don't know that the schools realize what they're doing. If the schools give an option, they are not closed, then the employees do not qualify under the strict letter of the FFCRA, because the strict letter of the FFCRA is if a school is closed, then you qualify for FFCRA, first 2 weeks sick pay, then the calculation of the percentage of your wages up to a point. I think it's up to, don't quote me on the dollar amount. I know one of them was 511 and one was 211. I think that the school is 211. Don't quote me on that. We haven't covered that in 16 weeks on the calculation that I ran. But you go back and look at it because we covered it all in detail. The reality is non-traditional learning forced, Fayette County and Jefferson, They do qualify under the FFCRA, which is nothing but an extension of the FMLA, which means that they have 12 weeks throughout the year if they've already used some of that time, whether it was the first go around of the FFCRA or whether they had a pre-existing FMLA use, whether they had a pregnancy, surgery, family with cancer, whatever it is, that all adds up, and they only get the 12 weeks total. They do not get an extension of 12 weeks. So non-traditional learning, Fayette County, Jefferson County, those people qualify unless they've run out of time. Warren County and Scott County, every other day, 1 day a week in service. Those people qualify intermittent every other day. If a school says that we're going to start late, that person qualifies 2 hours a day. If a school says we're going half day, that person qualifies for the half day if it is tied to the coronavirus. If that person elects at any point in time to take the non-traditional learning route and they are offered an in-person route, that person is not qualified at all under the FFCRA. That may change. We'll have to wait for Congress to address it. But at this point in time, that is the answer for that particular question. So 2 hours a day, coming in late, leaving early. The example I gave is I have an employee for one of the businesses that I run in Maryland. Maryland has announced in-person, but no bus service. So she has to take her child to school, which means she has to drive in and out during work hours, and I have to give her FFCRA, FMLEA leave because that is related to the school refusing to provide a service and her having to do that. Technically, the school's not closed. You could put yourself on that line. I would not. That the school's not closed, it's open, it's just later in the day. That's your fault, not ours, so we're not going to cover it. Good luck convincing a judge of that argument. So next, we can pop up the poll and then do the next. So the question I asked was, how's your business doing in terms of pre-COVID versus now? 16% have fully recovered or you're better than ever. That's awesome. The ones that are doing well, but not as well as last year, that's kind of what I expected. The doing okay, that's good as well. The struggling and hoping to recover, barely hanging on, those are the ones I worry about, and I'm sorry to hear it. The one thing, and this doesn't give you, the 2 people and the 14 that are on the struggling, doesn't give you any relief. But the vast majority of businesses right now are doing okay, and this is not just on this call. This is the statistics are showing either a full recovery, a very good recovery, or people are doing okay. If you think about it, with the level of the pandemic we've had, that's a pretty darn successful outcome. So congratulations to those of you that are doing well. That's just to see if we're doing about the same as what the national average is. So I wanted to kind of see where we were, and that shows that we are. So let's roll through any other chats that are out there.
An FFCRA question, is sick time only applied if someone's unable to telework? We've had employees test positive and work from home during quarantine. Can I use the FFCRA funds to pay for their time while at home, or is it just for people who are off?
So the answer to that question is a little complex, and I'm okay answering it though, because I don't think it gets into legal. Obviously it gets into legal, but it's not an individual. So hypothetically speaking, if an employee has to quarantine because they have COVID, but they're asymptomatic, then that person, you would allow them to work from home as they can and pay them to telework. If the person is asymptomatic and they can't work from home, then you have to pay them because they're under a self-quarantine order. However, if the person can telework, but they're having symptoms and they're telling you, I'm exhausted, or I feel sick, I can't do this, how do I, whatever, and you all know who you're talking about, people who are literally experiencing a symptom and they tell you they don't feel like they can work, HR professionals are going to have to handle that and address it on a case-by-case basis. If that employee is incapable of performing the essential functions of their duties because they are sick, they qualify under the EFMLEA as long as they have time available. So work with them. See if you can get them to work part of the time and handle it like an ABA request. So under the ABA, if a person says, you know what, I'm going to use an extreme example, narcolepsy, so I fall asleep in the middle of whatever I'm doing. If that's a situation, sometimes you have to give a reasonable request of give them a time for a nap. They don't work a traditional 8-hour, they work 16-hour days with 2 hours on, an hour nap, 2 hours on, an hour nap. Not saying that you can do that. But if you can work with somebody that has symptoms that says they want to work from home, but they can't commit to 8 hours a day, then work with them on that and see if you can come up with a way around it that assists you and them. While we're addressing the rest of these questions, we put up the code on the screen so that you all can write that down for your credits. Let's go ahead and we'll leave that up there, and I'll go ahead and ask the rest of these or answer the rest of these. Let's throw up as many as you want. Again, guys, I just want you all to know I'm frustrated with the lack of additional legal knowledge that I can throw at you this week. Every week I'm drowning in it and I'm trying to come up with more. This week I threw in a little bit of the questions and a little bit of the fun stuff because honestly I didn't want to cancel this with respect to the Toyota group first. I didn't want to throw out there the 15 minutes that I had and then just go, okay, that's it. Now do you have any questions? So I thought we would fill it with some real life question and answer and have you all address all of those as well. But let's go ahead and any other questions that you have up there.
Yeah, a couple more here. So this is just a follow-up. Somebody has an idea about the NTI. Could the person just not use 2 hours on FFCRA though to help with homework and work the other 6 hours?
If they're on the non-traditional and they tell you that they need some time but not the whole day to assist with their child, because the school is closed, your options are, do you pay them for the 8 hours to take care of their child or do you pay them for the 2 and spread it over time? I think the smarter answer for both the employee and the employer is to use the 2 hours to allow them to do the homework and work the other 6. Now, keep in mind, my caveat to this is the school has to declare it closed or the school has to force them to do non-traditional instruction, non-traditional learning. If the school's doing an option, then this is between you and the employee, but then the FFCRA, if you will recall, we talked about it a little bit last week, it has in there that the employer gets a dollar-for-dollar recovery of paying your employees during the FFCRA. If your employee does not technically qualify under the FFCRA and you submit this to the federal government, I'm not saying they'll be able to catch it. I'm not saying they won't. I don't know because they don't even have a clue how they're doing their taxes. But you run the risk as an employer if you say, yeah, go ahead and take the FFCRA. I know that your school gave you the option. I'm still going to let you do it. I'm okay with you all doing that as long as you understand the risk. And the risk is, what if the federal government comes out and says, your school was open? Employer, you don't get a dollar for dollar because the congressional intent was if the daycare or the provider is closed, you then can apply for FFCRA and the employer can get reimbursed. In this instance, if the school's not closed and you're voluntarily taking it on, just document it, figure out how you're going to handle it, agree with your employee, we'll cover it. Unless we get hit, then you're going to get charged with it, or just understand you may not get dollar for dollar reimbursement from the federal government. That's the answer.
Great. I got another one here for you to give you a little bit of context before we wrap things up too. So
Sure.
This is a healthcare provider that's chosen to invoke their FFCRA exemption. They have some employees that are not yet FMLA eligible because they haven't worked enough hours, haven't been there a year, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is that now that the kids' schools are opening back up, employees have children that are being sent home and having to quarantine. Thus, the adult or parent also has to quarantine. How best should they handle something like that?
All right, so there was a lot to unpack there.
All right.
Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
All right. So they are a healthcare provider that has chosen to invoke their exemption under FFCRA. They have some employees that are not yet FMLA eligible because they haven't worked there long enough. Now that these schools are opening back up, children have been exposed potentially to COVID, so they're having to quarantine at home. Thus, the adult or parent often has to self-quarantine. How should they handle somebody that is not FMLA eligible and cannot use FFCRA?
All right, so you're going to have to be very careful in answering this question, and it will take some legal guidance and or HR guidance, because qualifying as a healthcare provider and how you apply that is going to be touchy. The other bigger touchy thing is this. The qualification is a 30-day qualification. It's not the same qualification under FFCRA. There's an entirely different calculation that they passed. One is a 30-day and one is all employees. So the qualifications are not the same as your typical FMLA leave. Your qualifications are completely different. We did talk about that in week 3 and 4, I believe. So you'll need to go back and look at that. But the issue as well is if you are voluntarily accepting the healthcare exemption and now you're having employees that haven't been there long enough, then you're talking about people within a 30-day window. That gets extraordinarily complex. So I don't think we should get into the weeds that far, because now you're dealing with, we are down into one isolated type of situation, and without the background knowledge of precisely what we're talking about, you'd be at risk if you went on my advice, because I don't know anything about your situation. So I see one on here about the adjusting the start and the end times due to COVID, and it causes an employee to have to work their work schedule. If they cannot make that adjustment, does that mean that they can be paid for 1 to 2 hours of leave? Possibly. That gets into individual situations a little bit as well, because you have to look at each individual situation. Technically, that school's not closed. The school's adjusting its hours, but because the school's adjusting its hours and the employee has to adjust their work schedule, first question to ask is, can you do a flex schedule with the employee? If they can't make it, which is what this asks, then your other option is to either terminate or to allow the flex time. If you terminate, then you're going to be hit with a potential FFCRA violation, which was what was designed to be protected. So be careful of that. Another one on here from Lindsay. We're working 5 hours a day due to childcare and the school closing. With their agreement was going to change to hourly rate and pay 3 hours. I see no problem with that as long as the school is closed. If the school is not closed, but the school's reducing hours, I still don't see a problem, because technically the way I would argue this on behalf of an employer with the government, if the school is closed, hypothetically at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 4 o'clock, the school's closed during an hour when you would expect them to be open. I made up those times, but if they are closed for a particular part of the day when they would typically have been open, and you have documentation of that from the employee, this school is closed. It doesn't say whether it's closed permanently, whether it's closed daily, whether it's closed part of the day. Again, the rules and regulations, statute have not caught up with reality, so I think you're okay in that situation. Anything else on there?
I think you got it. Wrap it up.
I got the chat. I put the chat up on the screen so I could see it. And guys, I am embarrassed that I got locked out, that we had to do it this way, and that it wasn't as smooth as normal. If this was your first one, we usually run it a lot smoother. We just got locked into a Zoom storm, and polling issue, but we're really pleased to have everybody on here and appreciate everybody's input on what we should do in the future. We will use that information. And I hand it back to you, Lyle. Or not.
And
Who
you're,
am I handing it back to?
I think he's muted.
Oh,
Boy, I just unmuted a second ago. Jim, way to go. That was great. And even though you didn't think you had much material, those questions are so important for people to get answered. So it's a confusing